Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink I have in sample form. Come on, camera. It's by Noodler's Dark Matter, which, to my understanding, is a reformulation of a ink, like a special ink that was used during the Manhattan Project. So, like that's its gimmicky thing. So, yeah. All the tests were done in this Knox Aristotle with a fine nib. Camera. Oy. Anyways. And here's the chromatography. And sort of just for my own amusement, I decided to see what the difference in the chromatography would be if I let the ink fully dry into the chromatography paper. And as you can see, there's a very big difference. Here it's almost like a green goldish color, and all the black really fades up to the top. Here, a lot of that dark remains, and then sort of more of a light gray goes up to the top. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And here I thought I'd compare some other black inks. Here's Dark Matter up the top. Then Parker Quink Black, Lamy Black, Noodler's Black Eel, Noodler's Heart of Darkness, and Mont Blanc's Mystery Black. Now, in each one I did a water test and a bleach test. And yeah, as you can see, some did better than others. And my favorite black, ever since I've discovered it, has been Noodler's Heart of Darkness. And I feel like you can really see here, it shades very little. Even in the lightest areas, it's very dark. It's very consistent. Both the water and the bleach, like it didn't blink an eye, especially compared to all the other ones. Even Noodler's Black Eel, which is bulletproof, changed a little bit more than this, and you can see that it still shades. Yeah, Dark Matter, in my opinion and in my experience so far, it's definitely not going to overtake Heart of Darkness, especially because Heart of Darkness is just a little bit drier, but Dark Matter is definitely dry, which is going to be a bit of a problem in these tests. So, Clairefontaine, 90 grams per square meter, top down in density. 14 seconds to dry in a fine nib. And even though it's kind of hard to see in such a fine writing pen, you get shading. It grays out a bit. And personally, I don't like my black inks to shade. And yeah, it was problem dry. I mean, you're going to see throughout these tests a lot of hard starts. You're going to see me really struggling with it. There's no bleed, there's no feather, there's no spread, there's no sheen. There's really not a lot of echo. But again, this is very dense 90-gram paper. It moved a lot more than I would have expected for a Noodler's black ink. I've sort of come to expect them to be much more hardy than this, but it's still fairly there. It's still fairly dark, but it dyed the page, and it definitely wore away more than I was expecting. And on the paper test, I also included a bleach swab. I just took a Q-tip, dipped it in 1/3 bleach solution, and just dabbed it on the page. And as you can see, there's a lot of discoloration. A lot of it's washed away. So maybe not as forgery resistant as most Noodler's black inks. Here's Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter. Again, you can really see how it starts to fade into gray in areas, and you see the odd feather here and there. But again, really kind of had to fight it. It took 10 seconds to dry, which is weird. The dry times were oddly long, especially for a fine nib. And for such a dry writing ink, it was obscenely frustrating. But no bleed no bleed or sheen or spread. There were a few feathers in a few areas. Again, I expect better from a Noodler's black ink. A lot of it washed away, it feathered, it exploded, it dyed the page a bit. Again, the bleach test turned it this sickly orange color, and a lot of it is gone. You only see bleed in the water test area, so that's really not too bad. There is a little bit of echo. In fact, I think the fact that this is quadrilateral paper really helped with that. But anyways, next up is Tomoe River Paper, where it took 15 seconds to dry. It really didn't want to dry on here. Again, you get a lot of shading, which, again, personal preference, I don't really like. No bleed, feather spread. It did smear a little even after it was dry. There is a significant amount of echo, but this is very thin paper, and this is a black ink, so again, I would have expected a bit better from a Noodler's black ink, but it's not bad. It's still pretty there. It did dye the page. Again, not that impressive here. Sickly orange color. And next is 20-pound Copier Paper, where I feel like, again, you can really see how I was like fighting with this ink to get it to come out of the pen. And it shades a lot. In fact, it gets kind of thin in areas. It took 5 seconds to dry, which really surprised me. But also, there was bleeding, and like a pretty serious degree of bleeding. It not only bled through this paper, and like that's not the ink coming, or that's not the light coming through the paper. It bled that much, and it actually bled onto the next page. Like I was writing on top of something, and there were things on the next page. There was a lot of spread. The line got much broader. There's feathering. Yeah, it exploded. It dyed the page. It is pretty dark, but, you know, really not great. Next is Mead Notebook Paper, where it took 1.5 seconds to dry, but again, I feel like you can really see that I was like having to fight to get it out of the pen to get it to write. It just really didn't want to go, and it exploded and it feathered, and yeah, and again, it bled through and bled onto the next page, and this is a fine nib, and this is a fairly dry ink, and I was really not impressed with that. But, yeah, it's not the worst water resistance we've seen. It did dye the page, it did explode, it did feather. Again, not that impressive. And lastly, there's Moleskine Notebook Paper, and this is some new, well, actually, it's very old Moleskine Notebook Paper, but it's new to these tests, because the paper I'd been using before, I was like, this Moleskine paper is behaving so well that it's not accurate. I'll try some other paper. This other paper is also old Moleskine paper, and again, it's behaving really well, and that's my exasperated face. So, 12 seconds to dry. As you can see, it gets very thin again, which, again, personal preference. I don't like shading in my black inks. I said I'm really not a fan as of now. This ink really frustrated me. Water test isn't awful, but most Noodler's black inks will behave better than this. So, yeah. So, there you go. There's Noodler's Dark Matter. It's a reformulation of an old-timey government science project specialty ink. It's, in my experience, it's quite dry and fairly problematic. And I've already got some Noodler's black inks that I prefer. If I'm going to put up with the dry writing black Noodler's ink, it's going to be Heart of Darkness, because that one is fantastic. But for your consideration from the Triple N Network, if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching. Bye.